Top of the morning, everybody. Welcome to Cowboys, Trailers, and Ranches. I'm Jimbo, and today we've got a special guest and special co-host. It is Mr. Russ Phillips, and he is a cowboy poet. So you're going to learn a lot about cowboy poetry that a lot of people may not think about, didn't know it was out there, how big of an impact it has on people. So Mr. Phillips is going to do that today, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. I appreciate you joining us.
You bet.
We're live. We're live in Liberty Hill, which both of our hometowns, and beautiful background. This is awesome. Beautiful place. So we're going to get started. First of all, I want to check out all our sponsors and appreciate them as always. Ranch Texas, always in the house with their farm and ranch real estate. Rodeo Rigs out of Montana. Laredo Conversions out of Fort Worth, Texas. Thank you for those conversions on pickups. We also have Him Western Wear. You haven't seen them yet. You haven't seen the sport coats yet, but they're coming. Him Western Wear is the official sport coat of Cowboys, Trailers, and Ranches, and they're coming soon. The Cowboy Roundup, who I always talk about because it's such a great foundation. Miss Patty Franklin out of Shawnee, Wyoming. Please call her, talk to her about that foundation for youth rodeo clinics, scholarships. So very, very important stuff. The Beaver Box, always making those cool hat boxes for us. Check out Shorty's Cowboy Harry for that in Oklahoma City. So a couple weeks ago, I don't know if y'all remember, we had the pleasure of having Dolphin Jackson, who's president of Rodeo Austin. We had him on the podcast here early on. I guess it's been a couple months ago. Anyway, him and I got to be really good friends, and he invited me out to his ranch, Dolphin Jackson Cattle Company, out in Rockdale, Texas, a couple weeks ago. Asked me out, help work calves for the day. And I'll tell you what, it's always therapy for me to go out and work cattle. Always therapy for me to go out and castrate and dehorn, vaccinate. And I'll tell you what, thank you, sir, for letting me come out. And I think we worked like 300 head that day. And it's always a good time. It's always a good time. Like I said, it's therapy for me, and I just soon do that as anything. So, Mr. Dolphin Jackson, thank you again for that, and thank you for your friendship. So we've got a big day today, and it's gonna. I'm excited because I myself love cowboy poetry. I've been fortunate enough to be around some of the big hitters in poetry, Baxter Black, Waddy Mitchell, even Red Stegall in Fort Worth during his symposiums. So you guys are going to get a treat today. If you haven't been around cowboy poetry, it's good stuff. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce my guest today, Mr. Russ Phillips, cowboy poet.
All right.
Thank you again, sir.
Thanks for having me on. Honestly, that's the first time I've ever heard of castration as a form of therapy. But it's like I always say, calf fries matter. So.
You're going to hear a little bit of that today that you probably haven't heard from me, so better get used to it.
I wonder if I should use my real name
to protect the innocent.
Yeah. All right, so here's the sample, just to get jumping in quick.
Absolutely.
I call this the Buck and Mare. Actually did this on stage last summer with Michael Martin Murphy in Red River, New Mexico.
Get out of here.
Yeah. So, by the way, I will tell you, all cowboy poetry is true. Just mostly embellished.
Embellished, I like that.
Yeah. Well, this little young lady, she is just so pretty. It took all my focus not to stare. She held the reins out in her hand and said, "Sir, I need some help with this hot-tempered mare. If you could tame her, well, I'd let you name her, and I bet for you there'd be nothing to it." "Well, I am a cowboy, ma'am, and if that's a job offer, you better believe that I'll do it." Hoping she was watching me throw my leg over just like a skilled puncher does, I failed to notice the air between saddle and spine showing how humped up that mare was. I figured I'd lead her out to the left and we'd take it nice and slow so this cute little lady could watch me teach that pony some things that she ought to know. Then all at once, she pinned her ears back and sucked in a whole bunch of air. She bogged her head and grunted as the devil himself possessed that little roan mare. She broke in two, and then hit altitude, nearly hit my head on the full moon. 3 jumps later, I hung a spur up on a stratospheric weather balloon. Next thing I know, it's like an air show, and on one jump, we cleared the Big Dipper. And with so much hate in her heart, she'd grunt and she'd fart, and it sounded like some kind of demonic zipper. Each time that she'd land with my night latch in hand, I clung desperate so I didn't clear leather. With a crunch in my groin, the horn tendered my loins. Only tight wranglers now held me together. Finally got my spurs hooked in my cinch, and I grabbed my hat just to fan her. And, hey, little lady, keep watching. Now maybe you'll see an equine class on manners. Then that wily wench, she grabbed at the bit and clenched it with her back teeth. She tugged at the reins and lurched me forward, kicking my head with her back feet. Now my cowboy blood was burning hot, and I'd survived her worst, I assure. This nag, though petite, was hardly discreet, but I knew that I had the cure. I pulled her head left right up to my leg, and she bit me on my kneecap. Then my saddle come loose, and next thing I knew, we were sitting in each other's lap. I swung back around as her feet hit the ground and raked her once more with my spurs. Then she grunted again as if to pretend my meanness was nicer than hers. Well, that really did it. Made me more committed. I was going to best this Lucifer mare. Told the lady I'd tame her, and then I'd rename her and tie little braids in her hair. Well, then the door swung open, way sooner than I was hoping, and my wife, she came barging in mad. She screamed and she shrieked about female attention I seek, and in truth, she made me feel bad. Pretty lady just batted her eyes at my humbling demise, and the mare bowed her head like she'd ceased this. Then one final kick, I heard the sound of wood click, and a baby crib blew into pieces. That bronc finally tame, I proposed the new name, and the girl said, "That's the name of your wife." Now, girl, don't be slow. By now, you should know there's no coincidence in life. But never let it be said that I'd bow my head and back down from a young lady's dare. Though I'm a seasoned mister, I'm still a bronc twister, even on a stick horse mare. And so ends my story. Though details are gory, surely I'll be a legend out west. Though now I'm crippled, little girl, she just giggled and said, "Grandpa, you are the best."
Man, that's good stuff. Good stuff. Man, that brings me back to listening to guys like I talked about Baxter and Waddy. That was flawless, dude.
Those are big names. Yeah. That's a lot to live up to.
Well, I'll tell you what, that's good. I mean, honestly, that's impressive, man. So how did you even get, I mean, what's your background? How did you even get started in this?
Well, so 30 something years ago, I was working at KVET. I went to the University of Texas here in Austin and worked my way through school on the production side at KVET. So I was there for 3 years worth of the Sam and Bob show, and I'd go to class, starting at 11 or later.
KVET was a radio.
KVET, it's a country station in Austin.
Yep, KVET, right?
Yeah. And there was I guess the operations director there was a woman named Ruby Brew, and she really kind of ran the place. Well, so about this time, Michael Martin Murphey hit the Warner Western label and put out a CD on it was called Cowboy Songs. And then Waddy Mitchell came out with one. Red Steagall came out with one.
Yep.
Don Edwards came out with one.
Don Edwards.
And Ruby knew, like, I'm not ranch raised. I'm actually the first generation not raised on the ranch on either side of my family, but we were constantly at the ranch with grandparents, right?
Yep.
And so, I fell in love with horses as a 5-year-old kid, the first time I touched the nose of a horse. And so I grew up riding and feeding cows and all that. Well, so when these records hit the radio station, Ruby gave me some. And about the time I graduated, I was studying radio, TV, film at Texas. And about the time I graduated, the realization hit me, there's not the future in this that I wanted. I mean, essentially, I got asked, what do you want your life to look like? And I said, well, I'd like to live in a small town and have some kind of financial security. And they said, boy, did you pick the wrong industry? So
unfortunately,
so I was encouraged to just sort of go live the dream of being a cowboy. And I had a job offer in Arizona, and so I got hired for my first cowboy job in Arizona. I had to build fence in the desert for a month, and then after that, I guess I paid my dues. So they issued me some company horses, and fall works began.
Yep.
So it just sort of took off from there, and I always kind of kept in touch through the mail with Ruby, and she'd send me stuff, and I'd get these CDs and listen to this poetry, and it just sort of took off from there. But and I used to do a lot of Waddy stuff, around locally at Rotary Club, and little deals. And I was actually at the Red Steagall Cowboy Poetry Gathering a couple of years ago, sitting there listening to poetry, and I just started putting some phrases together in my own head. And I pulled out my phone. I was like, man, I need to write that phrase down. I'll use that someday. And literally by the end of that cowboy poetry session that I was supposed to be listening in, I finished my first poem. And so that just kind of got me started. And I've written some serious, some are a little more on the fun side. And
like the Buck and Mare.
I like the Buck and Mare.
That's good, man.
Some maybe a little more exaggerated. So I got encouraged to enter. There's something called Cowboy True. That is they have a poetry contest in Wichita Falls.
Okay.
And I think the actual festival is around April 1st, somewhere, end of March, something like that. And last year I won second in their poetry contest. So they sent me a nice gift card and a red ribbon that said second place in photography. Well,
guess what? You got the bonus.
Well, maybe you want me to share the one that won the award?
Absolutely. Yeah. Hey, so before you start, so I mean, a lot of people out there are probably just listening to their first poetry, the Buck and Mare, right? I mean, a lot of them have no idea. So what can you tell everybody? Why? So how and why did poetry ever start with, especially with cowboys, right? I mean, was it because everybody at the end of the day, after working cows all day and being out just with cows and horses all day, and they sit around a campfire and sit around at night and just, shoot the shit?
Essentially, so poetry is all about storytelling.
Right.
And for some reason, poetry, rhyme and meter is the magic wand that allows a story to be told more than once. So my poor wife has heard these stories a million times. and truthfully, I mean, I think you'd hear any cowboy poetry say that, or poet say that. But, I mean, I got one story that I've told for years that happened up in the calving shed in Montana. And it got so old telling it that I got sick of hearing it. and then I thought, well, what if I put it to rhyme and meter? And now, that one got a lot of laughs I performed it at the Fort Worth Stock Show.
Oh, wow,
last year. Yeah.
Wow.
I can do that one too.
That's a big hitter.
Do you have fans in Montana and Wyoming, that area where?
Absolutely. Yeah. Actually, that's big stuff for us up there.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so it's a way to kind of express things that touch you deep. It's a way to tell a joke. It's something that people will allow you to do more than once. And if they really like it, some people ask for a copy of it, and if you're just, the perennial one-liner smart ass, nobody, none of that has staying power.
Right.
So it's, it's really about the storytelling, I think. And it's a cultural deal too, because,
I think so.
Well, I don't know.
I remember even when I got out of the Air Force, and I did literally nothing but rodeo and cowboy around New Mexico and Colorado and Wyoming for a while after I got out. Man, I didn't pick it up myself, but I I'd catch myself, around a bunch of guys just doing this. And next thing you know, it's poetry.
Yeah. Well, and you think about it, like if you're not telling a funny story, there's a lot of things cowboys are passionate about. And, I cowboyed in Arizona, New Mexico, went up into Wyoming and then into Montana, and finally got homesick and came back to Texas. But no one wants to be preached at, and everybody has regional traditions. And this is kind of a way to sort of put it out in a way that's non-threatening, or where you can speak your heart without having to have a context where people were like, oh, that's weird.
Right. Right. Would you say also that it could even be a form of education?
Well,
I mean, I just sat there and thought about that as you're talking. I'm like, you know what? I think seriously, what?
It's possible. Yeah. I mean,
maybe not the buck and mare, but
a lot of cowboy poetry is about a specific moment of education.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, truthfully, like there's stuff that I've written where I'm like, okay, my kids don't appreciate this now. They're too used to parent dad as opposed to storyteller dad.
Right.
And so maybe someday stuff like this will resonate.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, let me just share this one.
Absolutely.
This is the one that won the award up in Wichita Falls.
Boom.
I call it character. We were sitting by a campfire, this old man and me, sharing jokes and laughing when he turned to philosophy. He said, if you're scared of getting out there doing something you thought you never could, well, I think the Lord has asked me to share that I really think you should. We're born soft like a calf's hoof with milk from a nurturing mother, but we can't stay soft because the gemstones in this life take some digging to uncover. Take a chance here and there and do something that to you sounds plumb crazy, else you risk living a life uninspired. Trying to play it safe, you actually got lazy. Proverbs 22 verse 1 says, a good name's worth more than great riches, but how's a man to make that name if he won't swing at any curveballs that life pitches? Or take marriage, for example. Movies make the wedding look like it's the dream, but it's the miles traveled after and hardships weathered together that creates the real bond, is what it seems. And the young man, he said, you're strong and filled with a God-given ability. But ladies worth having will find that recipe lacking if it don't include the ingredient humility. And consider my saddle horse over there hobbled. He was a bucking colt, used to send me soaring. Just think of all the things that I'd missed if I'd have let fear win and never managed to climb back aboard him. He said, integrity is forged in fire and character hammered and shaped on an anvil. But even Jesus weren't spared the hard test, for in his journey, he was tempted himself by the devil. So don't fear the struggle and difficult things that build determination and will. No, you be scared of the person you'd grow up to be if I was raising you on a pillow. Years have passed since I got that lecture as I stared into that dancing flame. Now that I'm grown with kids of my own, I sure appreciate Grandpa's wisdom and also sharing his name.
Oh. Boom. Boom. That's anybody that's had a granddad that's close to him or idolized him growing up. That just hits you. That just hit me.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, I feel for anybody that doesn't have like that grandpa experience.
I do too.
Bouncing around, feeding cattle, riding on the tailgate,
cutting firewood, fishing, hunting. I do too, man.
As a kid, my grandpa helped me to feel like a man because I was driving a tractor, long before I could ever drive a pickup. And, yep. And those bonds are educational and deep and meaningful. And I think in the city, we, in a lot of ways, have lost track of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know about yours, but both my granddads had a major, major part in my growing up and my education and what I did and what I knew. And two of the greatest men I ever knew, ever. So I'm sure kind of the same with you.
You bet. I'm super proud of that heritage.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. So with that being said, like who's your idols growing up? Who kind of, put a fire underneath your seat, so to speak?
You mean in a Western context?
Yeah, just I mean, kind of what when you were growing up, who'd you kind of look up to? Who'd you idolize? And
Certainly my granddad was that really on both sides. Unfortunately, my mom's father passed away when I was only 11 or 12, but I had a lot of time with my dad's father, and it really ingrained in me a big sense of history. And I'm sort of a history nut anyway, but on that side of the family, we go back clear to the Stephen F. Austin colony in the 1820s in Texas. And so I've got a whole folder full of stuff, from tales from the old folks, basically. And then, we've ranched in Burnett County since 1870, I think. And so
y'all got a little heritage.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yes, we own a ranch. Sometimes I feel like it owns me. And cowboy poetry for me has been an outlet that helps me cope with changing times. So let me just read you a note.
Right on. Roll.
So in the old days, I'd go to the auction with my granddad, and there's a little cafe, you get a hamburger there or something. And so this one's a little bit autobiographical.
Gotcha.
It's called The Auction Cafe. Last week, I hauled my calves to the auction, and I'd set aside a full day trying to gather what little paycheck I could for this outfit before the drought took my chances away. Neighbors were liquidating herds, trying to have something to graze on next year. I cussed a little under my breath, not because I was mad, but to help hold back a tear. You see, I poured all my money and all of my smarts into this cow-calf operation, only to hear the weatherman say I'm in the hottest, driest part of the nation. Profits are slim, but I've always got by and managed to breed some real nice genetics. Without rain for all these past months, my balance sheet's gotten plumb pathetic. My wallet had just enough in it for a sandwich at the auction cafe, so I sat myself down next to a gent from town, figured he'd have something interesting to say. He occupied his space with a pensive, distant look, and I said, "It's a crime what they charge in this place." When he turned his chair and looked at me square, I got full view of the gloomy look on his face. Well, out of frustration and attempt to start conversation, I said, if ranching were football, I believe I'd just punt. About to start in on the price of beef, the man shut me down saying, I too was a puncher once. Well, shocked at the mismatch between his look and his words, I figured I'd put old Townie's story to the test. From the sands in Arizona to the padlock in Wyoming, turns out he'd cowboyed on some of the bigger outfits out west. He'd grown homesick for Texas and took a Dallas girl for his bride. Raised on character and responsibility, his family needed him to adapt to town life to provide. A puncher's wages just wouldn't suffice when the missus produced him a daughter and son, so he put that old work ethic into a grindstone. For long, there's a thriving business to run. Before he knew it, time flew past him really, as old folks know that it does. He realized his kids had grown up and left not really knowing what an honest-to-God cowboy was. Sure, they'd seen pictures and some dusty old gear and heard some of the taller tales, but their main picture of their dad was a busy man, one that was good at sales. He advised me to hold fast, that these days will pass and one day the market would turn. He said God would make it rain again, and if I could hold out till then, the grass will surely return. But not so the kids. Said to keep mine a horseback, working with cattle, because no feeling is lonelier than seeing your kids talk about selling your old saddle. He said he liked to come and sit and watch the auction each year in November to see a new crop of calves and smell the old smells, but mostly just to remember. To daydream of times past with a faint smell of horse sweat and leather. He told me to treasure the fact that life on a ranch is simpler, more beautiful, and just better. The dollar signs are tempting, he said, and city life kills a cowboy's desire to dance. Said I'd do well to go home and impress upon my kid a pastoral legacy while I still had the chance. Well, when I arrived that night, I told the wife, we're keeping this place if we have to beg, steal, or borrow. Then I turned to my son and said, "Hey, buddy, how about we get up early and saddle your pony tomorrow?"
Mm. Man, dude, you are very talented. Very talented. Those are good. Those are seriously good, man.
Well, I told you they're all true. I mean, those are
I can feel it. I
those are
mean,
real
anybody
feelings.
out there, you can feel that.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody that's worked on a ranch or grew up on a farm or grew up around cattle, grew up, busting your butt at 5 o'clock in the morning, going out saddling your horse, and you don't come back in until 8 o'clock that night. You just felt that. You just felt every bit of that.
Yeah, it's sad to me because I grew up on the Lone Ranger and Gunsmoke, and all of it, right?
So that you and I grew up. Yep.
And
Cisco Kid.
all of it. I mean, I still go to museums to look at the stuff they wore,
Yeah, so do I.
But what was cool while my kids were growing up was superhero movies and, Western. They hadn't made a good Western since Lonesome Dove.
Nope, absolutely.
Nope.
And they've missed out, I mean, this generation has missed out on so much, right? And part of it's our fault, right? Part of it's our fault, but it's evolution, but it's greatly missed as we both know. So,
well, and I think there's a cultural aspect.
Yeah, for sure.
That is lost in that too.
100%.
I have, growing up, and if we got rain, I'd call my granddad. "Hey, did you get some rain?"
What rain? What'd you get in the rain?
And if gas prices went nuts, then you figure diesel did too, right? And so we'd cuss the price of diesel together. And not only was that unifying, but there's just so much in ranching that's out of your control and that you got to take on faith. And we've become so much more of a secular culture, I think, largely because we've completely lost track of agriculture.
Right. Yep.
Yep. So as you might guess, I got one about that too.
Education, right? I mean, that's
about just, agriculture, I think, makes you closer to God. And so I wrote this yesterday.
Fresh off the press.
Fresh like I stepped in it. Now, folks in agriculture seem closer to God, whether they spend their days with cattle or freshly broken sod. It's like communion to stand in the freshly fallen rain, and where there's drought upon the land, it sure causes us to pray. Still, it goes deeper, much deeper than that simple story told. It's the things that gently stir the soul for cowboys, young and old. Like watching a 2-year-old heifer quietly clean her calf, and how her instinct somehow kicks in for this most important bath. It's the satisfaction found at harvest time when a family's work is through. Though the farmer collects the paycheck, his family earned it too. It's the view up on the rimrock, watching a sunset going down, the same one blocked by buildings when you have to live in town. Out here, we're intimately aware that our Creator is the one who made it all, from the coolness of the breeze to the warmth of the rising sun. Who hasn't seen a glimpse of heaven when they touch a pony's nose, or seen the reflection of the sky where a field of bluebonnets grows? By contrast, folks downtown seem to have forgotten how it goes, getting their groceries from the store and dependable water from a hose. Life in town can sure make a man unaware, or maybe just forget there's divine provision when his will is in line with our sweat. Agriculture helps us be humble, as the farmer and rancher know. Nothing that pays our bills can happen without God that makes it grow. So as you commute there to your job, switching from bus to train, try and remember that out here, we don't ever cuss the rain. Do you ever stop to ponder about how all that's on your plate originates from God's reward to farmers and cowboys' unwavering faith? You can speak of science and technology or study man's innovation, but I submit it's universal arrogance to ignore the maker of creation. He provides, he humbles, and I pray he helps town folk understand so that fellowship with him ain't limited to only those of us living here on this land.
That's pretty deep, man. That's pretty deep.
Well, yeah.
Wow.
I needed
you
an
just
outlet.
wrote that?
I wrote that yesterday.
Oh, man, that's good. Man. So where, can you tell everybody, where are you? I mean, if they want to come see you perform, where are you gonna? I mean, are you going on tour, so to speak, or you're gonna hit some symposiums here and there? Or?
Yeah, well, you missed me when I toured with Aerosmith.
Well, hey, farewell tour. They got a farewell tour, so we'll be able to catch Russ on that.
No, sadly,
That was good.
what's really sad to me is there's not a whole lot of venues, and I'm not really well known at all. This is something where I used to do a lot of other people's stuff. I started writing my own about 2 years ago, but
Wouldn't have guessed that.
I don't think I have anything on my schedule, except I did get invited to perform at the Montana Cowboy Poetry Gathering in Lewistown in August.
Oh, right on.
So
Yeah, right on.
we'll fly up there.
Good stuff. Well, if
yeah.
you're in Montana, folks, anybody out, go check him out. As obviously you just heard it. Good stuff. Really good stuff. So I've got a question for you, sir.
Yes, sir.
So we've come up with a question that we ask all our guests. I'm gonna change it around for you just a little bit. So if you were to change one thing in the cowboy poetry industry to keep it Western, what would it be?
First, I would create an industry. that assumes money changes hands. Honestly, the most profound thing about that to me is as I go to some of these places where I watch people perform, and as I've made friends with some of the more accomplished poets out there, what I recognize, a lot of them has said to me, man, I really like that one. And you keep writing because somebody's got to take up this mantle when I'm gone. And then I look out at the crowd and go, well, I'm not sure what's going to be gone first, you or this crowd, because, I'm usually the youngest one by 20 years. And so if I could wave a magic wand, I think what I would do is somehow capture the imagination and attention of younger people so that they could fall in love with all things Western like we did.
Right on.
And really understand and appreciate all that goes with it. It's not just a hat and boots and toy pistols, man. It's time well spent with your grandpa. It's figuring out a work ethic. It's right. Having a scar to tell a story about. It's all kinds of stuff like that. So, they say the era of the cowboy is over. I'm thankful that I got to experience some of that, and I worked on a chuck wagon crew branding calves all summer in Montana. Maybe a lot of that's gone. I know people are still doing spring branding, but you don't see many wagon crews anymore. The 4.6s is now sold and commercial. They got shirts with logos and stuff. And
yes, sir. And you know what's funny? Every time I ask that question on every show, it almost always comes back to trying to educate the youth, trying to get the youth to see a little bit of what we grew up in, and try to bring some of that into nowadays. Almost every time.
Yeah, you look at these old ranchers. They may not have been an expert at at any one thing, but they could do everything.
Right. Yeah.
And so much now we live in a world where people maybe develop one skill if they develop any work ethic at all.
Yeah, true. That's a good point. That's a really good point. So, well, man, that was good stuff. I appreciate you sharing with that. If anybody wants to hear more from Russ Phillips, how do they get a hold of you?
Well, you can Google my name. I'm contemplating, I've done a living history thing for first graders every year for about 20 years, and I tell them my name is Bucked Off. So someday that might be my stage name.
Or you can catch him on the Aerosmith tour, the farewell tour, coming to a city near you.
That ship sail. No, I do have a website. It's a real estate website. It's not cowboy poetry.
It's all right.
I sell houses in town so I can live out of town.
That's a good one.
You can find me on Facebook if you do facebook.com/cowsfear Russ Phillips.
There you go. If you want some more of his stuff, that's how you get a hold of him. Before we go, want to let everybody know that's been reaching out to us at Cowboys, Trailers, and Ranches on apparel. It's coming. We are working on an online store that will be open and ready for business June 1st. So stay tuned, stay on social media. But Cowboys, Trailers, and Ranches apparel, as well as Ranch Texas apparel, will be on an online store, and we'll get you guys hooked up. So appreciate y'all having interest in that. So we are, I think we're going to call it a day, sir. And I appreciate you once again. This has been fun, man.
My pleasure.
This is fun. So Cowboy Poetry, it's alive and well, guys. And this guy is keeping it alive. So once again, we appreciate you. So we're going to sign off. We're going to let her buck, keep it Western, and we'll see y'all next week.